I'm amazed to see all the enthusiastic faces out there. You bring so much energy and passion to this conference. It's fantastic. I love it. I come here every year and I get energized and I take that energy back home with me and it sustains me until the following SACNAS conference. Anyone who takes time to walk around the 1,000 poster presentations that you guys will be presenting here, or any of the many oral presentations, will witness the great work that you are all doing. We are Latinos, we are Native Americans, and we are working at the forefront of all STEM fields. There's no denying that fact. We are here and we have arrived. So I want to start by saying a few things here. The progression of events that has led us to this point in history are many. However, in recent times, sadly, we've witnessed some renewed vigor in some elements of our society that threaten our communities. And I'm sure that many of you feel this deep in your core. And I admit that it's easy to become distracted with all that's happening around us every day, with breaking news here, breaking news there. But remember, the most important thing is for you to stay focused on your goals. Don't let that distract you. We need to ensure the success of each and every one of you, and this has to be our response. So I think it's important that as individuals, we learn about how the larger social fabric has shaped us, and how, as a collective, history positions us to confront the future. When SACNAS was founded in the early 70s, both the Chicano and the American Indian movements were strong. It's not an accident that SACNAS and many other organizations started in that time frame. Our parents and grandparents were tired of being treated as second-class citizens, especially after many had answered the calls to defend this country and its interests in World War II, in Korea, and Vietnam. In fact, some of our founders of SACNAS were veterans of those wars. And my own grandfather, which I'm very proud of, fought in World War II. He was in the front lines, and he narrowly escaped death several times. I'm proud of that. But you know what? My grandmother used to tell me stories about that time after the war in the small town where she grew up in California. So my grandmother would tell me this, so this is my grandmother's words. We entered the little store over on the corner, and the manager was sitting there. She was wearing this huge hat, fur coat, and when we walked in, she slowly turned her head, and she had her nose in the air, and she gave us a look. And I thought to myself, I'm not coming in here anymore. That gave me a bad impression. Not even a smile or a welcome or anything. So you can imagine my grandmother and her family at the time. My mother was just born. The sense of entitlement and the sense that she didn't belong, right? When my grandmother told me this, I was shocked. You know, I realize now, more recently, when I grew up in the same town, things were much subdued. There wasn't this overt type of racism. However, I was affected by the surrounding dominant culture. I realized this much later on. I don't think I realized it at the time. And sadly, it drove me to become ashamed of myself. I was ashamed of speaking Spanish at home. I was ashamed of having parents who worked in the cannery and in the fields. I was ashamed of living in a low-income housing. I was ashamed of having my mother wait in line for government cheese. And worst, I became ashamed of my brown skin, of my heritage. And I think when I was young, I didn't understand. I didn't understand those forces that were causing me to feel this way. I was blinded by the society around me. And throughout middle school, my grades were not good. I wasn't considering college as part of my future. I didn't see anybody around me doing these things. But you know what? I got lucky. I had engaging teachers in my high school, and in particular, there was a young biology instructor who had just gotten his master's degree, and he was teaching, and he brought in these journals, Nature and Science, and he would toss them on our desk, and he'd say, "This is where the real science happens. What's in your textbook is old. This is the new knowledge." And he told us about how creating new knowledge could help society. And this had a huge impact on me. It triggered something in me because I didn't have those kinds of role models in my own family. But I was excited by the potential of a career in discovery and creating new knowledge that would benefit the world. So you know what? I began to make up ground. I took summer courses. I started earning excellent grades. And I had a guidance counselor who really helped flip my mindset from not going down a college track, but instead focusing on getting a university education. You know, and I let that fear of not being good enough, it propelled me in my training for my scientific career. It pushed me to excel. When I went to graduate school, basically I never looked back. So I tell you this, not because I expect everyone's going to relate to this story, although some of you will, or maybe just to certain parts of it, but because most of us and our families over the years, the decades, or even the centuries, have had to deal with similar circumstances of having to understand their own identity within the context of a dominant culture. I've come to realize that we all have our stories, and that these stories fill a continuum of experiences. And we should take power from that. We cannot let others define us as a single homogeneous group. Even within this room, we bring great diversity of experiences, and this is a beautiful thing. The moment I stopped feeling ashamed for who I was a critical moment in my life. I developed a sense of pride in my culture, in my heritage. I started to passionately devour Latino literature, music, art, history, and I felt liberated. I felt liberated from these chains that I had put around myself. Yo soy sangre de indio. Yo soy mestizo. Yo soy Latino. Importantly, I realized that the struggles my family had gone through for generations was something that I owed a huge debt to. And my grandmother would tell me in her stories about her time in San Fernando Valley, where they used to work in the fields. And she went to school as a young child, and her mom used to give her tacos and tortillas and beans. And my grandmother would tell me this. She said, there was a little orchard, and we would go over there and sit by little trees, me and my sister. And you know what? The gringos, the white folks, they would come and sit close to us, and they would taunt us, and they would laugh at us because we had our tacos of beans and tortillas. And she said, oh, this made me so mad. And today, she tells me, pues, Todos los gringos comen tacos. My grandmother, she was really funny too. And so, just wanted to share just a few more things because I think it's relevant to the story here. She would tell me that every year, again, I'm going to say this in her words. She said, every year we go back to the Imperial Valley. We put on a belt with metal hooks and a big sack. And we would go along the rows and we would put the potatoes in the sack. All along the ground. We would be crawling along the ground, putting these potatoes in. Yes, we did that. And my mother, again, this is my grandmother's mother, said, oh, we're not going to go to the valley anymore because we used to go from Imperial Valley to San Fernando Valley and migrate and follow the work. She said, we're not going to do that anymore. So her uncle told her, well, if you don't do that, you don't follow the work, you're going to die of hunger. And so my grandmother said, well, again, she's telling me about her mother. And you know what my mother did? She bought a 50-pound can of lard. Can you imagine a 50-pound can of lard? A 100-pound sack of flour, and 100 pounds of beans. And maybe we ate beans and tortillas all winter, but we survived. And in the summer, there was work again. And like that. So finally, we came here to this little town. And mi papá said, here, there's lots of work. We don't have to worry. There's prunes, there's walnuts, there's a la fregada. And we were happy because we weren't going to have to be dragging ourselves on the ground, man. And little we made it. Those words that my grandma told me are very significant to me. She said, little by little, we made it. And I owe everything that I have because they went through that. The fact that no one in my family had gone to college was not because they weren't intelligent or capable or hardworking. It was because for generations, my family had been working at the edge of poverty, trying to squeak by an existence within a challenging social atmosphere. So these stories are illustrative of how little by little folks in our community improve their situations. And by the time that SACNAS started in the 70s, there had finally reached a critical mass of highly educated Chicanos and Latinos and Native American scientists. The founders of SACNAS knew that their numbers were very small. But you know what? They started looking around for each other. They started calling each other, networking. They wanted to see who was out there who had come from similar cultural backgrounds. And they assembled the first SACNAS meeting in New Mexico, in Albuquerque, in 1972. There were 18 people there. And that was as far as the network extended. They tried to include everybody they could find. And although the group was still small enough to fit in an elevator, and as the saying goes, thankfully that elevator didn't crash, they made it happen. So this was a nucleus. They set forth to establish an organization dedicated to increasing the numbers of participants from our communities in science. That was the basic mission. And we've been carrying out that mission for the past 4 decades, and we're not going to stop. Today, we're gathered here for a conference to further the mission that these founders set out. And I want you to realize that it's you. You are the central element of that mission. The sheer intellectual power that's gathered in this room today is a powerful reminder of how far we have come. from those 18 individuals to what you see around you. And that's quite an accomplishment. Never forget that. Never forget that. Be proud of who you are and represent. Sí se puede.